All right, good morning and welcome to the Virtual Fed panel. Thank you for coming. We know you have a choice in panels and we appreciate your patronage. I'm Eric Goldberg. I've been 30 years in the games business. I'm hoping to get probation for next year. I started as a game designer, and in recent years I've worked with monetization companies starting 8 years ago, and with social game and free-to-play companies starting 5 and 3 years ago, respectively. While I've been at virtual economies for quite a while, our first panelist on my far left and your far right, Patrick Chung, who is the managing director of SK Telecom Ventures, and who works very closely with Cyworld on strategy. Cyworld has been doing virtual monetization on a large scale before almost anyone else on the planet. SK Telecom is the largest telecoms company in the most advanced telecoms territory in the world, with the possible exception of Japan. Next to him is Clancy, who is the Senior Vice President of Product Management and the General Manager of Direct Revenue, which is the thing that we're going to focus on over here for IMVU. IMVU is a very much an avatar-focused virtual world. It is very well known for a couple of things. One is its 3D avatars, but the other is that it was one of the very first U.S. operations to generate $1 million a month in revenue from virtual goods. Next to him is Daniel James, who is the CEO of Three Rings. Just as I am ancient in games and Cyworld is ancient in virtual worlds, Daniel is in the Western world one of the grand old men of virtual goods and games that operate on free-to-play.
Feeling older this morning, I think.
He did leave the picture of Dorian Gray back at his hotel room, but so that he could look as young and beautiful. It's his avatar that's shown up for this particular session. So we are going to focus on the key moving parts in the virtual economy that matter to Western people. And we are going to pay close attention to the areas where either the West tends to fail, or the West tends not to understand what has worked in other economies, and also, of course, what is peculiar to this particular area. Daniel, in recognition of your status as grand old man in this territory, I'd like to ask you to focus on the three key areas where Western players, including many of the people in this audience, most often either misunderstand or even screw up when it comes to generating the most money out of a virtual good or virtual economy.
I like to be contrary. So I'm not sure, like 2 years ago or a year ago, or, a long time ago when I first started rambling on about virtual goods and virtual currency, I think that, demonstrably the West was a long way behind Asia. I'm not sure that that's the case anymore. So I think that, particularly just in the last year, the fact that there are now 150 or however many million people on Facebook who have been exposed to a dual currency system. The idea that there is a attention currency and a cash currency is now a mass market, well understood phenomena for a very, very large number of people who do not even consider themselves gamers. They're playing Farmville. I play Farmville. I don't play games. So I think that's that's indicative of that was something. There should be two currencies was something that I would say 3 years ago, and people would go ooh, and they'd write it down on a piece of paper. And now it's like, okay, yeah, of course there should be two. What are you talking about, you idiot? So I think we've come a long way. That said. And I don't profess to be an expert on what goes on in Asia, and Patrick probably knows a lot better than I do. But
Daniel, we may be as smart as the Asian market. Let me accept that, but we're not as rich. They have a $1 billion virtual good company. Our total virtual good sales in calendar year 2009 was $250 million. Right. So can you? Let me accept your principle that we are smart, we are pretty, we are all these good things. But what are the three areas where we can have the most gains in catching up?
Well, volume. I mean, obviously, right? So yeah. I mean, it's definitely the case. But I mean, that speaks to how do you get to that level of volume? So I mean, a genuinely mass market phenomena like Cyworld can obviously, and I think Farmville, Cyworld, may be comparable kind of size of pie, but Farmville is way less optimized for amount of money per user. So I think the principal gain that we'll see once we've traversed this sort of mass marketing of games and of virtual goods games, which I think is in the process of happening, you will see, and I think Zynga is already starting to do this year, is they're starting to optimize more aggressively on revenue in a way that they've not previously. So I've been told anyway that this has not been a focus for them until very recently, so that kind of ARPU focused, LTV, and looking at all the different tricks, and there are many that we can try and disassemble in order to do that. I think are going to be a big area where we can improve. So volume in number of players, optimization, and I guess I've already said the mass market thing, but I think. You've seen some very interesting things like with IMVU and the Second Life, and on Farmville on the other end, which is a mass market phenomenon, but there's no Western equivalent of Cyworld. I mean, there's nothing that has broken out and become again a truly mass market phenomenon that is a virtual world, and particularly I think less so for Cyworld. And again, this is not an East-West thing so much, but I have made a big bet, not entirely successfully so far, but hopefully that will change. And I think others will hopefully in the future make bets to try and harness user-created content. And I think that some very smart people, believe that that's going to be a factor in achieving the scale of goods that are necessary. Certainly a lot of Western companies have only just started to work out that, including us, frankly, that you make more stuff and you make more money. Like there's a very direct relationship between the number of items and the regularity that you issue them, and kind of event-based marketing and scarcity and all of these things, again, under the big bracket of optimization and kind of understanding buying behavior. Yeah.
Two quick questions. When you say that there's nothing like Cyworld, you've said nothing. You mean that there's nothing that's quite as pervasive throughout the culture as Cyworld?
Yeah, if you could look at Cyworld as pervasive, like MySpace or Facebook has been pervasive in the West, but fundamentally, has a virtual goods model at its center. And I think Facebook is kind of moving in some ways in that way by rolling out credits and having a currency built into the platform, but has no ambition to make to kind of make a game part of the platform. If anything, they're quite happy, putting games in a box.
And just to finish, your three candidates are volume, which Patrick is excused from handling, so you and Lee will have to carry that for next year's conference. And then the next one is optimization of revenue for the player, and the third is, did you decide on a third, or are you going to pass that to the other panelists? Which is your privilege.
I'll pass it.
Okay, Patrick?
Actually, I wanted to add one piece of color to your comment, and if you can imagine having 80% market penetration for 30-year-olds, 20-year-olds, and teens, then you have a sense of where Cyworld is in Korea. It's 8 out of 10 people are using Cyworld.